All right. So executing the mission. This is part two to the Ultimate Ministry Advancement Guide and how you advance the ministry or business that God has laid on your heart. We began last week by talking about the vision that God has given to you and how important that is in execution, in understanding and having that vision of that clarity, that thing that God has pointed you towards. You have to have that solidified and you have to get that from the Lord. And we talked about how important it is to get a vision and to see it, have that clear 2020 that you're pointing towards. And that is really the foundation for today's lesson. Because once you have that vision, you have to put feet on it. You have to put legs on that to actually see it toward fruition. And we're going to talk about some strategies, some disciplines that you can put into yourself and into the people that you lead to help see that vision to fruition. And before we get started, I want to reference a few scriptures. These are not on your notes, so these are some things that you can jot down and refer later at a later time. The first one is James chapter 1, verse 22 and 23. Here's what it says: But be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourself. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like a man who looks intently at the natural face in a mirror. So tells us that we need to be doers of the word and not hearers only, because if we're only hearing the word and not doing it, then we are deceiving ourselves. Which we can apply it in today's lesson that we're going to talk about is it's not enough to have a vision, we have to execute the vision. And then another reference text is Matthew chapter 7, verse 24. Everyone then who hears these words of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house on the rock. So again, when Jesus was speaking the Sermon on the Mount, he did not want people merely to listen to him, but he wanted them to execute what it is that he had given them. So how do we apply it to today's lesson? Well, in the lesson that we spoke about last month, I one of the exercises that I asked for everyone on the training to do was to actually go out and seek God and get a vision for their life, for their ministry, for their business, to get a clear direction. And for all of us that have done that, now the next step is how do we take what the Lord has given us and actually execute it effectively? And that's what we're going to talk about today in the execution of the mission. So let's look at the difference between a mission and a vision. Vision is what an organization sees, mission is what an organization does. So let me repeat that. Vision is what an organization sees, mission is what an organization does. So an example of that is at a grocery store. You go to your kitchen, you see what you need, right? You get a vision, you go to your kitchen, we need milk, we need this piece of food, we need that piece of food. So you see it, but the mission is going to the grocery store and getting the food and bringing it home. So there's a difference. So it's not enough simply to see a need or see something that you're to do, but you have to execute it in the mission. And that's really the difference. So when we talk about executing the mission, it is in conjunction with that vision. So the mission must be in direct alignment with whatever the vision is that God has given to you. The mission is how you accomplish the vision. It is the doing of the dream. Vision is what you see, but the mission is how you do the vision. The mission statement is basically how we are going to get it done. It's how we are going to get it done. So there's four questions that we have to ask ourselves when we are going to put together this mission statement. The the one question is, what do we do? So what exactly do we do as an organization, as a ministry? What exactly is it that we do? The second question is, how do we do it? What's unique about us? The third question is, what value are we bringing? And then the fourth question is, whom do we do it for? So these are some clarifying questions that we ask when it comes down to actually verbalizing and putting together an effective ministry or business mission statement. So now what I would like to do is to go over some highlights from a book that I highly recommend us reading. And because of all the books that I've read about execution or getting things done or executing a strategy, the best one that I have come across was The Four Disciplines of Execution by Chris Mackenzie. And he really broke down how to execute effectively in order to get results. So I want to go through that, give a little bit of an overview on the 4 points, but I'm hoping that you are able to go and read this because it will really give you some real takeaways that you can go out and execute whatever it is that God has given to you on a weekly, monthly, and yearly basis. It is a very well put together criteria and strategy to help you get done whatever it is that God has laid on your heart. So, what are these four disciplines? The first discipline is focus on the wildly important. So, in other words, we have to focus all of our attention and effort on only the things that are wildly important. Focus is the starting point of execution. So, we have this vision that God has given to us. And then we ask these clarifying questions about our organization, what it is that we build an organization around the vision. But once we have this organization in place, what are the most essential things that we have to focus on? What are the most important things that we have to clarify? And that's where we start. We say, okay, I can do a million things, but what are the most important things for me to do? That is where we begin when it comes to executing the mission. Discipline one is about applying more energy against fewer goals because when it comes to setting goals, the law of diminishing returns is as real as the law of gravity. That's a quote from the book. In other words, when our attention is scattered, we get less results. But when we center our attention on the things that are most important, that's where the most results will come. So that is why we have to center our attention on the things that are most important for our organization. One at a time. Mackenzie explains that as humans, we are designed to be able to work on one thing at a time and excel at it. We are not designed to be multitaskers. I know there are some people who think I can, do a whole bunch of things at one time. God designed me in that way. And there may be some who, you can think that. But in reality, humans, in order to be effective, we have to focus on one thing at a time. We can't do multiple things. So, in order to really see significant results in our efforts, we must learn how to focus. We have to learn how to focus. And I've seen this time and time again in my personal business and even my personal life. Whenever I'm able to focus on something, that is when I'm able to get the results that I need in order to excel. When you select your wildly important goal, you need to look for the goal that you're willing to put all of your effort into, work on every single day, and make difficult choices. The aim is to work on this goal with extreme diligence until it is completed and you have achieved what you are after. So, if you're going to focus on one goal, you have to say no to a bunch of other things, which is very difficult for us. But in order to achieve high success, we must say no to the good in order to say yes to the best. And that is the whole idea. So we have to say, I'm not going to focus on this task. I'm not going to focus on that task. I'm only going to focus on the thing that's going to bring the most return on investment. And when we get into the habit of that in everything that we do, especially when it comes to fulfilling the purpose that God has put into our hearts and into our heads, that's when we're going to see the most return and the most value in our organization and in our ministries. So it's important to understand that we must be focused. Jesus, when he was on earth, was focused. He had specific tasks that he knew he had to do, and he had to say no to some people at certain points. So in order to see the results that God has put into our hearts, we must be willing to say no to other things and focus on what it is that God has put into our hearts. Narrowing your focus is going to yield better results. Although acknowledging issues and recognizing opportunities is good and beneficial, it does not mean you have to try and split your attention between all of these things at one time. It's still important to be aware of core priorities and identify the ones that need your most attention the most. So it's important when you're putting together this discipline is finding these two priorities, the top two, and you focus all of your energy on those things. There is something called the Pareto principle, and this is not in the notes, but it says that 80% of your results is going to come from 20% of what you do. So your top 80%, you have to figure out the top two priorities and focus all of your attention there because that's where most of the results are going to come in. And that is the same with any organization. It's just a principle that has proven itself to work. And that's what we have to do as leaders. You can't focus on everything. So you have to find the thing that is most important, the priority, and center your attention there. You have to decide what your highest priorities are and have the courage, pleasantly, smilingly, unapologetically to say no to other things. And the way you do that is by having a bigger yes inside. So again, this is difficult because there are going to be people and other things coming at your attention. We are constantly being pulled in several different directions in our lives. What we have to have is that big yes, and that yes is the vision that God has given to us. When we have this yes, it makes it easier to say no to the less important. And that is what is essential if we are going to see results in our lives and in our ministries. We must be willing to say yes to the best and say no to the things that don't matter as much. So the key thing for this discipline is you look at all of the tasks that are important to make your organization, make your ministry, make your business run, and you find the two most important tasks and you focus all your energy there. And that is how we are going to see the results. So narrow your focus to one or two wildly important goals and consistently invest your team's time and energy into them. In other words, if you want high focus, high performance team members, they must have something wildly important to focus on. So again, look at all the tasks and find the things that are most important and bring all your team members, all your resources, everything that you have and focus on those things. And that's the first discipline of the disciplines of execution. To narrow the focus of an entire organization, each team must have a maximum of 2 wildly important goals. The battles you choose must win the war. That's a great quote. The battles that you choose must win the war. You can't get on every battle. You can't get in every argument. You can't get in everything. So you want to make sure that the things that you choose to focus on are the things that are actually going to push your organization to the place where God wants it to be. That your senior leaders should not be dictators, but they have the power of veto. So the senior leaders can't be the sole person that speaks into. So as the leader, you can't be the one that makes, that just makes the decision. There, it has to be a collaborative effort, because again, the more engagement that the team has into it, the more effective it's going to be. However, the leader must be able to veto it in order to get the progress that is necessary. All wildly important goals need to have the following formula, including a deadline. So, which means X and Y by Z. There has to be a deadline. And we're going to talk more about that into the other disciplines. So, discipline one takes the wildly important goal for an organization, breaks it down into a set of specific, measurable targets until every team has a wildly important goal that they can own. And that leads us to the next discipline. So you have these goals, then you have discipline two, act on the lead measures. A lead measure is the measure of all the tasks that are directly related to achieving a defined goal. So I know it may not sound clear at first, but let me break down what that actually means. So there's a difference between lag measures and lead measures. A lag measure is an indicator of when you have achieved the goal. A lead measure will inform you of the likelihood of reaching the goal. Lead measures are predictive and entirely within your control. When a lead measure changes, it is likely that the lag measure will be influenced. So let me give you a specific example. How often your car breaks down is outside of your control. It's a lag measure. Maintaining your car and ensure that it gets done regularly, that's a lead measure. So in other words, the lag measure is the weight that's on the scale. So you get on the scale, you see a specific weight. The lead measure is diet and exercise. That's the primary thing. So when you find these the one or two wildly important goals, then you act on the lead measure. So you find, okay, what are the things that I must do in order to influence the lag measure? The lag measure is maybe the sales, maybe it's the amount of people that are impacted, maybe it's a specific number goal. Focus on lead measures, not the lag measure. So focus on the thing that's going to influence what you're trying to do instead of focusing on the end game. So many times we just focus on, okay, the results, but we don't focus on the things that lead to the results, right? And this is a shift of perspective. The more feedback you receive and act upon the lead measure, the less likelihood that your car is going to break down. When realizing how much work is required, they don't often pursue the data at all. This is a real problem and something you have to avoid doing. No matter how hard no matter how hard it is, you have to pursue the lead measure data. Without data, you can't drive performance on the lead measures. Without lead measures, you don't have leverage. So the shift of perspective is we have to find what are the key things that are going to make the biggest impact on the results of what it is that we're doing. So focusing on the things that are going to lead to the proper results and putting all of our engagement and focus on that instead of focusing on the end results, because many times we want just magically the results to just magically appear, but we don't focus on the things that are going to make the biggest impact on those results. And that's the shift that we have to focus on in order to accomplish the vision that God has put into our hearts to accomplish. So these are disciplines that we have to impact in and directly focus on in our lives. If the lead and lag measures are not recorded and relayed to all team members, then they will quickly be forgotten. So we're going to talk about, so that leads us to this third discipline, keeping a compelling scoreboard. So just sort of keeping up with all that we're talking about. The first thing that we do in executing this mission statement is to have the wildly important goal. The second step is to focus on the lead measures, so the things that are going to influence the results. And then now we're into keeping a compelling scoreboard. So ensuring that we are focused on what is actually happening. It's so important to ensure that everyone knows the score, can see it visually, and understands what this means. Knowing the score is going to keep you and your team engaged and propelling forward. In essence, you and your team make a bet that you can move the lead measures and that those lead measures will move the lag measures. When it starts, even people who have shown little interest become very engaged as the entire team starts to see that they are winning, often for the first time. Keeping in mind that their engagement is not because the organization is winning or that you as their leader are winning, it's because they are winning. So let me just give a practical example. Sports is and I know everyone on the call may not follow sports or may not be sports fans, but let's just use this as an example. There are a few people, I'm sure, that engage in some level of sports, whether it's football, basketball, uh, you know, we call it soccer in the US, but it's called football in around the world. We have American football, and there's the football in the world, or we call it soccer. But if you play any type of sport, just think about it when you go to the park and you see people playing, let's say basketball or football or some sort of sport. There is a different level of engagement when people are keeping score or when they aren't. You can tell when people are playing sport whether they're keeping score or not, because everything is focused on winning the game. That is what keeps team members engaged, because they want to score a certain amount of points so they can beat the other opponent. That is what keeping a compelling scoreboard will do for whatever you're trying to accomplish. Finding out the measures and making sure everyone knows whether you're winning or you're losing. Because when people feel like we're winning, we're engaged. And even if you think you're losing, you're still wanting to recover that score. So you're still going to be engaged. And that is what we must do as leaders, is make sure that the people that we're leading, or even us ourselves, we know what the score is and if we're winning or if we're losing. The purpose of a scoreboard is to motivate the team. So you see that There on a basketball scoreboard, it's very clear whether a team is winning or whether they're losing. And that's intentional because that increases the engagement of the players. So they can know if I do this, then we're going to, if I score this many points, we're going to win. If I don't, then we're going to lose. So, what needs to be on this scoreboard? Ensure that it's simple, only have the necessary data on display to ensure that at a glance everyone can understand it. So in basketball and football, for instance, there's a lot of different metrics that you can track when following these different sports. However, you don't need to put all of that information on the scoreboard for everyone to see. Only put the information on the scoreboard that is actually essential for the success of the entire team. Make it visible as possible to everyone. Visibility equals a consistent reminder. So finding a way of making the score visible for everyone to see is really important. Show lead and lag measures, and then ask the question, are you winning? You need to be able to tell within a 5-second glance if you are on right track, and then be in it to win it. So that's what makes a compelling scoreboard. So finding creative ways of telling everyone that's working on the vision that God has given to you if they're winning or if they're losing. Are we accomplishing it or are we not? The more clear that we can be about that, the more effective that we will be in accomplishing the goal. Does engagement drive results or do results drive engagement? That's the question. McKinsey believes that results are what truly drives engagement. When a team can identify their actions as having significant impact on the results, then their engagement is going to soar. So when people who are trying to accomplish something feel like what they're doing is actually driving the score forward, they're going to be more engaged. When they feel like what they're doing is actually making a difference in the overall accomplishment of that goal, they're going to engage at a higher level. And that's what we want as leaders. Team members who are engaged, that they are working with us to accomplish the goal. Scoreboards can be a powerful way to engage employees. Motivating players, scoreboards not only drives results, but uses the visible power of progress to instill a mindset of winning. So whether you have employees, volunteers, people who are working with you to accomplish the goal that God has put in your heart, scoreboards is a way of reminding them of what the goal is, of if they're winning or not, and it will keep them focused on winning as a mindset. And when a team gets together and they're focused on winning or accomplishing something, that is going to help them to succeed. And that's what we want. We want a mindset of winning in our organizations, because the more that we focus on what it is that's important, the further that we'll get towards accomplishing what God has placed into our heart to accomplish. And finally, the fourth discipline is create a cadence of accountability. Disciplines 1, 2, and 3 bring focus, clarity, and engagement, which are powerful and necessary elements of success. But with discipline 4, you and your team ensure that the goal is achieved no matter what is going on around you. So the first discipline, the wildly important goals. The second discipline, focus on lead measures. The third discipline, create a compelling scoreboard. They're all necessary. But if you want to ensure that the goal is being achieved, you have to add in this fourth discipline, which is the cadence of accountability. And what does that look like? WIG sessions, wildly important goal session, is a 20 to 30-minute meeting done every week with prearranged agenda designed to refocus on accountability. So what does that mean? When we know what our goal is and we know whether or not we're winning, The accountability meeting, it's bringing everyone together and say, okay, we have these tasks, these lead measures. Is everyone doing those things? So it's getting everyone focused, and then there's accountability. Everyone's meeting together and they're like, okay, we're doing this. Everyone is doing this. This creates this accountability. Like, I know my team, it wants me to do this. My group wants me to do that. It creates that accountability. And when they know every week I'm going to be accountable for these tasks, that is what's going to push the lead measures forward and eventually impact the lag measure. Always be consistent with your WIG sessions. Hold these on the same day and same time of every week. Limit the WIG session discussion to only actions and results directly related to the scoreboard. Do not go over the maximum time of 30 minutes. So this should be separate from your overall meeting, but it should be very quick. It should be very focused, and it should just focus on what are we doing, what we said we're going to do. Are we pushing the scoreboard? Are we doing the lead measures? Are we focused on the wildly important goals? That's what this session is about. That's what the focus is. And when we're doing this and we're focused on this every single week, it's going to bring results. Have a clear agenda. Start with a brief report on commitments, then review the scoreboard, identifying the success and failures. Finally, plan the new commitments and direction. Have everyone prepare for the meeting. Encourage every team member to think about the same question each week. What are the 1 and 2 most important things that I can do this week to impact the lead measures? So that's the question everyone has to ask. What are the 1 or 2 things that I can do this week to impact the lead measure? And that leads to the end of this session. So I know I kind of threw out a lot of information. I look forward to hearing back some of your feedback, but that's the session. So the 2 things that I want you to do is, number 1, craft your mission statement. Look at those 4 questions that I asked before. Craft your mission statement for your organization, for your ministry, for your business. And then number 2, read The 4 Disciplines of Execution by Chris McKenzie and write a 1-page summary. And that's what's going to allow you to get these concepts and really utilize them. I don't care if it's a church, I don't care if it's a business, I don't care if it's an organization, if it's a nonprofit, or if it's just your personal life. This framework of execution will drastically impact your life in such a great way. I've used many of these principles in my own organization, and I've seen tremendous success because it keeps you focused on what's important. One of the key things that a leader must do is remain focused on the things that matter. And when you do, everyone around you will, and it will help to ensure success long into the future. And that's the goal, and that's what we want. So that's the session for today. And I want to give some time and opportunity for you all to give some feedback on it. What are some things that you've learned? What are some things that you take away from what was talked about? I see Clanice, she's unmuted herself, so I'm going to call on her first. What are some feedback from today's lesson?
Found it interesting. I'm eager to read the book, The 4 Disciplines by Chris McKenzie. Um, I guess some of the feedback I have is I think it's important for the accountability segment that you mentioned
Mm-hmm.
because I already crafted my mission statement. So I'm a little
Wonderful.
ahead uh, because that's what you mentioned we should be doing from the last session.
Mhm.
But when I look at this, I think that's pretty important because, as you said, if you don't focus on one of the points that you made, if you don't focus on what's important, then you will be saying yes to other things that you shouldn't be saying yes to.
Right.
Also,
Absolutely.
also you kind of lose focus, and some of the things that you really had a vision for, it might get lost. kind of in the shuffle with all the other good deeds and good
Mhm.
things that you are doing that you mentioned.
Absolutely. And really a lot of the concepts from this book, and I'm looking forward to hearing some of your feedback from this book. It's an excellent book. It will impact every area of your life, not just the vision that God has given to you, but just every aspect of your life. Using these principles will just make a significant difference. But it just makes it really simple. So finding the two things that are going to push you towards your goal and focusing on the lead measures. So not the scale, the not necessarily, what the scale is going to look like, but focusing on exercise and eating, and that's just an example.
Mm-hmm.
Getting a scoreboard, so knowing whether or not you're winning or you're losing, and then having that accountability is just an amazing framework that will help you to accomplish whatever it is that God has laid on your heart, and it will help just drastically push whatever it is that God has put in your heart forward. So very, very good feedback. Thank you so much for that. Chuck, why don't you give me some feedback on today's lesson?
Right. What I got from you kind of clarified some things as far as you saying that the vision is what you see and the mission is actually what it does. Because
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes we kind of get confused where like the mission is the vision. So that kind of clarifies that. And as far as the lead and lag measure, you have to know the difference between the two, and that sometimes if you focus on the end results, what you do to have it won't be sustainable. So you got to be focused on the lead measure and not necessarily on the lag measure.
Awesome. Awesome. Really good feedback. How about Sister Cheryl? Do you have any feedback for us today, Sister Cheryl?
Well, I like the idea of focusing on what is important and like one thing at a time.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was very important because, like you said, you get pulled in so many different ways and you try to keep yourself in all different things, but you really do have to focus on the one thing and to say no even to the good things. But I
Mm-hmm.
did have a question that on that lead measure, would that be something that you could put into the category of also preventive maintenance?
It really depends on the organization and what it is that you are wanting to do. So it depends on, and so that really goes back to the vision. So the first thing is you focus, like whatever the vision is for the organization, for the ministry, that sort of, and that sort of tells us what it is that we're doing. And if preventative maintenance is included in getting that job accomplished, or it may not. So it really depends. And one of the things that as the leader, you have to sort of determine what those lead measures are. You and your team, whoever it is that's helping accomplish it. So once you sort of focus and figure out what it is that you are to do, then you determine what those lead measures are to accomplish it. If does that sort of answer the question?
Yes, yes. Thank you.
Perfect. Um, Jacob, do you have any feedback for us today? I'm not sure. How about Pastor Young? Pastor Young, were you do you have some feedback from today's?
Presently, I don't because hello,
Oh, okay.
hello,
Yes.
Mr. Larry.
Yes, I definitely the subject matter that you were using as it pertains to the focus piece.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big piece that I'm personally working on right now.
Yeah.
Just really being able to do one thing at a time, and that's a little hard for a pastor,
Right.
but I'm getting more and more to that place where I am able to accomplish that.
Absolutely. And And it's really difficult for all of us because it's as leaders of any organization, there's so many different things that you can do. And it's really getting down to those focus pieces in order to, really it's really finding the thing that makes the biggest difference in accomplishing that vision or whatever it is that God has put on your heart for that ministry to accomplish, and finding ways of delegating the other responsibilities to people so that way you can focus on the thing that really matters. And getting your team focusing on the thing that matters is really going to make a huge difference. Excellent feedback, sir. Jacob, sorry about that. Did you have any feedback from today's lesson?
Honestly, I actually didn't because I was going through a few things because I just relocated to an apartment. So I've been trying to catch up with it. I would run a catch up on the link you sent to me based on the last class, on this present class.
Okay. So
So I asked you to bear with me.
we'll have this lesson on YouTube, so you'll have a chance of looking back at it at another time. But really glad you're able to be on the call today. So all right, guys. Today was a bit of a shorter lesson, but I'm hoping that it added value to you and um, that you do some of the assignments that were mentioned. And if you weren't able to do the assignments in the last session, please try to do those as well. These build off of each other. So the more that you engage with these content, the better. And we have one last session next month. I believe it's on the 12th of December that we're going to finish off this 3-part training session, and it's going to talk about strategy. So the first session talked about vision. The second session talked about mission and executing the mission. And then the third thing we're going to talk about is strategy. And I'm really excited about that session. It's going to be very helpful in helping you accomplish whatever it is that God has placed on your heart to accomplish. So I look forward to seeing you all next week. Do you guys have any questions or comments before we end today's session? All right. Well, if there's no feedback, thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you next month. God bless you guys.
Likewise, bro.
Yes, sir. God bless you all. Have a good rest of your Saturday. Thank you for joining.
All right,
Have a
thank
good
you.
rest of the day.
God bless you.
Thanks
Bye.
for the lecture.